So welcome to Partner Up Partnerships Podcast. All right, we're live.
I'm excited to jump in. Get to work.
The thing that matters in a partnership is the trust and sacrifice.
Proposing, building software that works for you.
All right, what is up, Partner Up? We're back. Justin, how's the week been?
It's going good. I feel like we're coming off some QBRs, some kickoff prep, so it's a lot of talking about getting stuff done. Now it's time to do it. Now it's time to take action on everything we learned in 2020. So exciting week. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with you. You're just like, please stop with all of this planning and this preparation and these learnings. Let's just get to work. Let's get to work. I love it.
Reps and sets, that's how we learn. That's how we give air to the ideas and make sure they hit the mark. So that's my MO.
100%. And today we're going to be diving in with someone that's done this. I think I'll say fairly young partnership professional. Like, I've been impressed with what Kevin's been able to do. So our guest today is Kevin McFarland, and he's been able to do some pretty amazing stuff inside of Accenture and then also most recently at Coursera. But quick thing before we dive in with Kevin, for those folks from the Cloud Software Association, yep, we're partnered up with the Cloud Software Association. If you're an executive member, you can actually watch Partner Up now live. And you get to watch it live, and then the last 10-15 minutes we'll reserve for Q&A. So pay attention to that. Like, come join the Cloud Software Association. If you're an executive member, you can actually do Q&A with us right here through our Partner Up podcast portal, if you will. So shout out to the CSA. Go join. It's a fantastic community with 4,000 plus members, and we'll see you maybe live, and you can actually ask people like Kevin and future guests questions live at the end of the show. So Kevin, welcome to Partner Up. Yes. I've really appreciated getting to know you over the past couple of months and just learning some things from you. And I'm always looking for, because Justin and I are we come from the MarTech, right? Like marketecture and sales tech kind of the partner angle, right? On the B2B SaaS side. And I'm always looking for some angles on partnership industries or twists that aren't necessarily right in your wheelhouse that you can extract lessons from and maybe apply to your own partner program. And most recently, you were heading partnerships at Coursera, right?
Correct. And we call it industry partnerships. So call it all the non-university partners that we were adding to the platform.
Right. And because university partners to some degree are kind of customers.
Correct.
Right. To some degree. I mean, at its core, it's kind of a customer, right? They're serving the, obviously the end customer being the student. But what I'm going to try to unpack here with you in terms of like a topical area is that a lot of B2B SaaS, like partnerships programs, they are B2B themselves, but then their end customers, clients, they're also B2B. Coursera is a little bit different in the fact that most of the companies that Coursera sells to, they themselves are not B2B, right? Like you're not selling to a company that's selling to B2B. You're selling to companies that are servicing a consumer, right? Like those are the end users of the Coursera product. Tell me how you think that impacted building up this kind of partner strategy around B2B partnerships that impacted B2C growth, right, for your end clients.
Great question. And on from B2B and enterprise, which was a very different world of learning the B2C world. I think a lot of the partnership principles are the same, but the paradigm is different. If we just start at the B2B versus B2C business related to what we're doing here, B2B, I think it's a lot clearer. You have a use case you're focused on. You can develop a solution during that sales pursuit and you interact with the customer and you know them well. Versus in a B2C model, the easy way is to say a lot of growth teams that are focused on serving a B2C customer experiment. So a lot of A/B testing, the volume is higher, your knowledge of the customer can be a little more limited. So the paradigm is different. And we had to, and even trying to figure out the opportunity for the partnership pretty differently.
Gotcha.
Pretty differently. Tell me more. Why do you think it's different?
I'll give a couple examples. one, just to start with the success, we partnered with a big brand early on and said, let's go after consumers together. They wanted to reach, in this case, more independent developers. We said we have a lot of consumers. Let's put that up. And they took the right approach of looking at signals from their own marketing, looking at signals and data that we had, and beginning to launch some courses iteratively to figure out who this customer is, what they care about, and how do we get a significant volume that each of our businesses care about. And then have since scaled on and been really successful at Coursera. Contrast that with another infrastructure partner I partner with who had the same goal of reaching more individual decision makers, but they took the approach, spent a lot of time planning what their executives like to hear and their buyers like to hear, and tried to put that up in a very, call it, waterfall approach. And it was a lot of time and effort spent planning, very, very limited results, and they spent all their money planning and building before they were able to iterate on the signals they were seeing from the market.
Interesting. So with the first example, was that more of a ship a minimally viable product, try it out with a smaller audience, and then from there scale it, via basically partner marketing means, and then the latter was much more let's plan it ahead of time, let's try and forecast this out a couple months, a couple quarters, and really run with a plan from there.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way of putting it.
And how did those tool sets differ? Like, it seems like you kind of had your marketing hat on in the first one, and it was much more sales and strategy hat in the second. What were the differences? What were the similarities? What did you carry across both, or how are they different?
Can you ask the question one more time?
I would say, like, it seems like the approach is like the approach with the first partnership was much more marketing driven, where it's less, introductions and working on particular accounts or one-on-one basis, but more a one-to-many basis. And the second was more of a one-to-one, approach, or let's connect account teams and sales teams across these organizations to work this larger strategy. What tactics did you use across both of those partnership approaches versus what differed between the two of them?
Yeah, between the two,
And I think maybe less on like landing the deal and maybe more on, okay, you've decided to partner, right? The execution from the tactical execution from post signing that partnership.
Yeah,
How did they differ?
post signing it, when we were successful, we first clarified who we were trying to serve, and then approaching, understanding their needs, working to build something together, and then launching it quickly. And here's where, given Coursera a company first, especially when we were doing partnerships, I think the more successful partnerships we were able to lead, to consumerify the offer that we were launching together, as compared to B2B offer set of messages. In our case, trying to pack that into a course, and then market that.
When you say consumerify, I think I know what you mean. Tell me more. To consumerify, like, were you trying to help them launch specific offers that they could then put into their sales organization, right? That, like, how did consumerifying an offer really work? This is like a product of like packaging and pricing and like productizing something.
A little productizing, a little packaging. A lot of the partnerships were publishing courses on the platform. Think like an app store who wanted to create a course to reach a larger consumer audience. The biggest difference we saw was getting that offer or the product right in a B2C context. I had to learn that's very different than in a B2B world, especially enterprise. Because if you think B2B, position it, you can a sales team who can message it properly. In a B2C world, the product largely needs to be able to sell itself, and consumers need that convenience and easy ability to understand what the course is. So take, for instance, we worked with one large tech vendor, and they wanted to scale their training in order to users for their cloud. So ultimately selling B2B cloud services to individual developers who are making decisions. Part of a B2B is partner enablement, it's customer enablement. Sometimes it comes post-sale. This partner we worked with listened to us and also we buy it. Package it in a way that is approaches learners where they're at, or users on Coursera, matches the behavior that they're used to doing on Coursera and the format they're used to on Coursera, and then begins to engage them and build the funnel and drive new usage and new activations of their services. Ultimately, they were very successful in that, while other partners were trying to take what they could give to their sales team to configure, try to throw that on consumers without the scaffolding or support of a sales rep, start engaging and using it. And those as well.
That exercise in productizing and offering. What do you think the lesson is for folks building B2B partnerships? Like, who are the stakeholders you were working with? Were you working with product marketing to kind of go, okay, what's Coursera's core value proposition? What's this? Working with product marketing on the partner side. Maybe what lessons could you take from that? Because I feel like if you could get really good at helping define an offer that can be consumerified, so to speak, that you could translate those learnings to B2B.
You probably could in today's context. Yeah. So I think that for a B2B company approaching someone like a Coursera or a consumer first company, I think the big takeaway is recognizing and be prepared for tweaking your normal offer from a B2B context to a consumer context. And fortunately, if you're working with a B2C partner, they most likely will be able to give you direction and guidance how to present to their users. That's best practices, design guidelines. And so typically when you start, you can follow the lead of the partner, but I think it's being ready and willing and able to customize that offer some. I think that's the first part. And working with these consumer product teams is there's an appetite to look at the data and experiment, and then where you can match some of that behavior of let's run an experiment, let's run an A/B test, let's clarify our hypotheses, test that quickly with data, and validate our way to product market fit. And if you can match that, we're successful in partnering with an organization like a Coursera.
There's some insight there. How often, think about this, if you're in B2B partnerships and SaaS, how often are you thinking in those terms, like A/B testing, messaging, and resonance, like in the field? Like the feedback loop in partnerships is way too long. It's way too long, right? Like typically there's, put on my developer hat, there's the old waterfall methodology of like, let's scope everything out really big and then launch this thing to the market. That feels like B2B partnerships versus agile, which is more iterative, right? Like product improvements, reducing feedback loops, the cycles between feedback loops. I think there's a big lesson there for all of us in that, committing to a partnership in the spirit of learning, and on nailing that with your partner in the service of coming up with better customer outcomes than you all know today. That's why I think a lot of these great partnerships are steeped in, in integration and having some customers in those feedback loops. I think that's a really great insight. Tell me more about some of these companies that you were kind of like partnering with or targeting in the beginning. Like in the beginning, how big was Coursera? How many employees were you roughly?
We were 200 employees and just beginning to figure out how to work with corporations that work in universities.
It was pretty much at that stage, was your revenue driven by basically consumer demand, like people publishing and consuming courses on a one-to-one basis, more or less?
Correct. It was pretty much an business when I joined. There's no enterprise sales like there is now. It was all consumer.
So there's a lot of people. I get pinged by them. It's, they get, my director of sales has just pulled me into a partner role. My CEO, my VP of sales, my VP of customer success. And you kind of come into Coursera. Was there a defined strategy for how to take this consumer oriented business, leverage B2B partnerships to get more mind share with companies that had access to consumers at scale? Was that a defined strategy when you came in, like, hey, Kevin, here's what we're trying to do? Or was this a figure out partnerships kind of conversation?
It was mostly figure out partnerships. I mean, there was a strategic hypothesis. So if you think about, we had a lot of university courses and people coming to learn university from the universities. There was a strategic hypothesis to say learners also probably need to learn job-ready skills, and we think that will come from companies. Who and why and what the model was, we didn't know. So it was first coming in and then beginning to segment out, doing your normal strategy work. Where do we start? I could say, given my background, tech is changing quickly and we need skills. What's the use case? Like, who's the buyer? Why do they care? And how big is the potential to go after each? And so we could begin to segment it, develop a target list of brands and attributes or criteria we thought mattered most in a partner. And then went out and tried to sign some of those partners. I'll be honest, in the early days, there was a little bit of, given our limited understanding of why partners cared, and then also a limited understanding of who our consumers were and why they were coming to us. There was a lot of trying a bunch of things and seeing what worked. Fortunately, we signed Google as an early partner, and then that taught us a lot about that use case and why they cared and would partner with somebody like us. Then we could build a playbook and a model around that as one partner type and begin to scale out similar types of partnerships.
And what particularly got Google interested? Obviously, Google, massive company, sees Coursera, relatively small company, wanting to partner. What got them interested, or what was the hook?
Based on what we were talking about earlier, there's a consumer side. We had a lot of individual consumers and their target audience, data scientists and developers. But then there's a strategic reason of, as technology companies grow and as especially large cloud providers grow, there's a dearth of skills in the market that are impairing. So there was a reason Google had to reach and train an audience that would be the users and buyers of their tools, and ahead of sales to help build a funnel that they could sell to. Interesting, we didn't know that level of nuance, so we got into the partner conversations. I said, look, we'd love to partner with Google. We think they can teach the world. They came to us and said, hey, you have an audience we care about. And it was in those discussions we found out a little bit more of the nuance of what that business need is. And looking at that, you can start to begin to pattern matches and say, if they're looking at that, my companies that look like them have a similar need, and if this works for Google, we can probably go to those other ones and address a similar need in a similar way.
Gotcha. I feel like that's that play, or that, be able to identify one partner and get the motion down and then say, hey, let's go replicate this with similar partners, is all too often underdone, not done enough, right? Did you, off of that, once you landed Google and you figured out kind of, okay, this is an ideal partner, this is working well, how did you then go find those other partners that look similar? Or was it pretty apparent just because of the market?
A mix of both. I will say that there was a step in the middle, which both of you have probably experienced. That first partner you're going to learn a lot from, both in terms of them as well as your own organization. So we learned a lot, had to overinvest to get the partnership working, and plug all the gaps we had being an organization that worked with somebody like Google in that type of way before. Even things like, if we're used to working with universities where professor builds a course during the summer, puts it online, and then forgets about it you have Google trying to compete and catch up with AWS, and they have someone full-time looking at the data almost every day. Very different set of expectations, and very different way you're going to make the partnership successful. So we spent some time just learning how to do it well, and then delayed doing many other big partnerships until we got that one right. That then became the use case that we could go to others and say, here's what we're doing with Google or a large technology partner. And we think we could help you as well. So we had the play, and then from that we could begin to narrow down the list to say, who was our buyer? It was or who was our main partner contact, the training department, especially the go-to-market lead. And they had enough resources to go big, and they're in the enterprise space. And then so you could, at first I used just those attributes to be able to say, let's look for other companies large enough. They have a sizable training department where they go to market lead, and developers or individuals they're looking to reach. And let's start talking to those types of, and try to work with them. As we began to tell the story, we also got some inbound. Yeah, with them. I run a similar team, and I want to do something likewise.
Gotcha. So much like a marketing and sales team creates an ideal customer fit, you created an ideal partner fit, and did all the research and development and use that first partnership to really round out what that maybe some of those other partners are going to care about, and then go land them.
One follow-up question on that. Was there an analog for Google? Like, were they working with any other learning platforms to kind of develop these types of things at scale prior to Coursera? Was there like someone they tried and failed with, or other things that they had tangential smaller partnerships with?
I think that,
or were you really first?
We were first also because
you were best.
Google Cloud was early when we started partnering with them. I think Cloud and Google Cloud training come from the industry and or had done organizations who had worked with some channels or had done online learning themselves on their own platform. So I think there's some familiarity with the space. There's an analog in this space to working with instructor live training providers, or call them professional service in-person firms. But we were the first on-demand or online partner of Google Clouds.
So kind of like leaning on maybe some of the executives' backbone from like the VMwares and stuff like that, where they'd really deployed, channel training at scale, which is kind of funny in that, on the Google Cloud side, it kind of comes full circle for channel because the use case is super meta here, right? Like you're partnering with Google, and then you're also doing so in a way to not just, drive consumer education, right, and educate people, but also to empower Google's cloud sales force through their channel, right? Was Google Cloud also using this for like Google Cloud partners? Yeah, so that's super meta. That's like the most channel partner thing I've ever heard of.
No, that's where it got complex. Yeah, because it is. You need to satisfy enterprise users, partner audiences, consumer audiences with the same set of courses and on the same platform. And we were trying to drive up the numbers, but across multiple audiences and multiple channels. So yeah, it got complex and quite meta.
Complex and quite meta. But I think this is a really fascinating topic around like B2B to B2C end customers. But you've also built some really cool things prior to Coursera. And I feel like a lot of consultants that end up at, the big five, right? The Deloittes or the Accentures, the whoever's, the PwCs, oftentimes they're on an account, right? They're account directors, but you were there trying to really build some stuff from the ground up. And I think we'd be doing interviewing Kevin McFarland a disservice without talking about, creating some of these kind of like first of its kind partnership models and what you really did over at Accenture, because, you know, you talked about some numbers. I don't know if you can talk about them, but like the scale that you're talking about with Accenture was, you know, 0 in revenue, 1 million, 5 million to what? Hundreds of millions. Okay. There's very few people in partner land that have ever built hundreds of millions of dollars worth of partnerships. Very few people. Where, like, was this one project? Was this one partner? Let's unpack this. Like that alone is its own kind of topic track of like, you know, building something at that scale inside of a company of that scale. Because I want to say, I want to let people know, you know, when you're partnering up, and I work very closely with some of the biggest tech companies in the world. Justin works very closely with the biggest tech companies in the world. It's also very hard to get things done in one of those big enterprises, right? So it's really hard to build a partner program from 0 to hundreds of millions in the startup world. But I can only imagine being inside of Accenture. Let's unpack that. Where did you start? And maybe kind of start walking us through that journey.
Yeah, and I was fortunate. I did the normal consulting strategy work, but got connected with a group to build a new kind of partnership. And there were a couple going. I think they were going okay, and I started rethinking the in the playbook for how we build these large partnerships. To give you a sense of where it falls in the world, if you think there's traditional alliance, which Accenture has a lot of, and it's adding resale to projects. And then there's joint ventures, which Accenture has tried some, and they're in the news and mixed success. And we said, wait, maybe there's something in the middle that can get the level of differentiation and power of a joint venture, but still be within the organizations to leverage the pre-existing channels and infrastructure like an alliance. Through different names, but you know, think of let's join together, and so that it was four components. There's a big strategic why that the organizations cared about. There was differentiated offers we built together. There was actually some development work, a customized enablement, and grease of driving a go-to-market. I'll give you an example to make it real. One of the larger we worked on was with a leading tech company. This was 6 or 7 years ago. We could both see a big trend coming for IoT. So there was, from the top, a lot of emphasis focused on we need to build an IoT business and capture the spend that's going to go into IoT solutions. So there's a big strategic reason, and big data and analytics was to attach ourselves to strategic agenda or from the top, big enough. Then we could define what pieces that we together differentiated the sales teams will care about, and we define some relevant there, and then began to work on an enablement strategy and could best activate each of the sales after team have sales pursuits. And so you're talking 30 dedicated FTEs between the two organizations.
Gotcha. And how did you square away those use cases? Was it talking to customers? Was it doing market research? What did that look like?
A mix of it. And we developed a methodology for how do we really find prioritize which use cases to go after. But it was, we were getting insights from prior sales, feedback from the field, research, traditional strategy research being done. And I think when we were at our best, it's looking at the data together, bringing those in, advertising them against a framework with the sales team and the tech teams to get and a portfolio of offers that we could take to market.
Gotcha. And was the sales team apprehensive to sell this, put this in front of their customers, or because you had included them in the development process, they were much more willing to start this motion?
Once you get to the motion, I think what we do is the sales reps aren't immediately jumping on board. There's the selling and the convincing and the activation and the enablement you still have to do. Fortunately, it was a little easier because we were strategic, call it some that they weren't able to, and some in a new they could address that they hadn't before. So we were able to get, and there was a lot of executive sponsorship. So we were able to get in front of them and get some interest. I think a little better than if we hadn't done that. But to really get the motion going, it's your normal teach them how to sell, work with the first, enable them to go sell it themselves and help them build up their own capabilities and in Accenture's world, repeatable services that they can sell over and over. Going.
Gotcha. And did you work across the sales team? Was there like a pilot crew that you worked with initially? I think a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, hey, I've got this idea for a new partnership, new co-sell motion maybe with a partner we work closely with, trying to figure out whether I should roll out to my entire team or start with a tiger team and just a small pilot. What did that look like?
We've tried, across the years, I've tried multiple approaches. I think the best is still when you start with a tiger team, get some early sales and build off from that. Because two things happen. You validate this and really understand what the market needs. And you first win that can be your lighthouse or referenceable win. And a sales rep who's happy then starts.
Right.
We've tried to go big fast, and part of the challenge is when you go too big too fast, too high,
right.
or miss a customer nuance or customer need that you didn't know before. Example, we got, I think, a little aggressive in the IoT space. We were new, we were early. The market research was compelling, but few people had deployed it. And we didn't know until we got in that customers did not want to go big yet until security was fully figured out. So it started with 2 customers quickly earlier, fix that, and then in a better place and then sell. So I would start with the tiger team.
Talk about the playbook side, Kevin. I mean, that's something that, in our kind of like conversations leading up to this, you had a bunch of people. You had, 50, 60 FTEs on this project. And how do you start to do that pre-work of building out the plays versus the execution and the iteration? Talk to me a little bit about how you went about, defining a playbook for something so big.
It was really chunking up into those 4 pieces I told you about. It's getting the governance right, getting the offers, getting the enablement, and getting a sales team. And when you have 60, you begin to separate them into those different functions. The playbook we really had was
what I want to pull apart is let's go beyond the concepts into, I'm actually just curious how you deliver and get buy-in. And I heard a story once of it was this VP of sales at 5 Stars, and he would tell managers, your job is to enforce the playbook, right? So it's not just the concepts that I'm interested in. It's how do you get that enforcement of the playbook, right? Ensuring the playbook is hitting the ground.
Yeah, I think, well, let me run by you what the playbook was, and then we can build off that. Because it's really set up the playbook, and then we had people running each of these and again, you're across multiple people, but it was making sure we had a differentiated, better together story that we could build on, and nailing that first. And it was very discreet. We're going to do a partnership with this company, There's going to be 3 offers we're going to take to market. Here's where they are. Here's why. And here's the what we can sell. And so it's getting to that level of product or offer clarity around building it around that. You had something that you could really sell. And so from a call it governance perspective, that was part of what we looked at. What's the products? Why? And do we really believe that's something? The second part of it was beginning to build out that enablement approach for how do we build up the kids. And we could segment out how do you go from they can sell on their own, and what are the steps that we're going to do, and how we're going to measure the number of people at each phase. We started to implement for that part of the just a start. So every partnership we could pull up and say, do we need at each stage? And let's look at so the teams. And then the third is your go-to-market and driving deals. And that's, just traditional sales overlay. Let's look at the pipeline and execute sales and how you manage that. And then, quarterly, we would roll that out, work hard across those 3.
One follow-on question, Kevin, have you done any? One of the things I was always impressed with you by was your ability to, take a conversation and then like re-articulate that back kind of in a written format. Like some of the stuff that you sent over to me and we were chatting about in the kind of the past, it was just like, my gosh, Kevin gets it. Have you done any write-ups on any of these experiences? I'm just curious if you've done any like articles or blogs or anything where we can send people to, because there's so much to unpack and how complex these partnership structures and deals and the time it takes, but the milestones along the way. Have you ever done any kind of like write-up around it? Okay, well, I'm going to encourage you to. I'm absolutely encourage you to. I got to see the write-up. I want to see this, like, I want to spend a lot of time in like this particular deal because there's so much to unpack. Where can people follow you in the interim? Like, so whenever you do publish it, they can make sure they get it. You'll post it in the CSA. I know you'll post it in the Cloud Software Association whenever you write it. Where can people follow you?
I'll post it there. And until then, follow me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com.
Follow you on LinkedIn.
/Kevin McFarland.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this week. Just a reminder for the folks that are calling in live and chatting, you can actually ask us questions, so feel free to call in. But we're going to wrap this section of the podcast. It's the first one on the new platform and the new model this week. So we're going to continue to iterate on this live format and test out different platforms and how we make this perfect. But for those listening on the pod, Apple, Spotify, make sure you rate us on Apple Podcasts. Justin is a fiend for reviews. He really loves reviews. I'm blaming that all on him.
I thrive on feedback.
You got to get the likes and subscribes on the YouTubes. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube whenever you get the new episodes drop. We record every Tuesdays at 5. So we'll see you next time on Partner Up. Peace. All right, that's where we'll wrap. And let's see if, I'm not sure if we have anyone. I know there were some issues. I was checking in the CSA and it sounded like people were having some issues getting tuned in on the live. So we'll see if we have anything coming in. I don't know. If Sunir, if you're there, can you try to give us a chat? Okay, I see some chats. I can't tell. Well, it's one of the things that's weird though. How do I do things?
Just drop a question in the chat.
Just drop the question in the chat. I think you can try to call in, but I can't see your view. I think we can actually accept live call-ins. But otherwise, we will happily we got 10 minutes. If there's no questions, no problem. But if there's questions for Kev or us, we're happy to hang out and Sunir's calling. Is calling with the following question. Do you actually get to join in too? Oh, this is cool. What's
Oh,
up, Sunir?
wow. Look at this.
This is the OG himself. Oh, but we can't hear you though. I think you're muted. Let me see. Can I unmute you? Doesn't look like you're oh. So I think you were just saying what's up.
In the interim, Kevin, any advice for folks that are just getting into partnership role? Maybe it's their first time coming over from sales, coming from product marketing, coming from marketing. Any advice for those folks? Because I know I've had a few that reach out to me that have said, "Hey, enjoyed the podcast. I'm new in this role. You're kind of my go-to to figure out how to do it." But any advice from your end?
It's a good question. I'll give two. I think early on, it's important to really clarify what the metrics of success are and what the expectations are. What I've seen is business development and partnerships can be used in a variety of ways. Executing partnerships don't control very upfront to be very clear on how you're going to add value, what the expectations are, and how that's going to be measured. I think then the second, just a longer term, what I would always think about is learning some of that product side of the house. I think I've worked comes partnerships, set of skills, and just drive harder, push more. But the best partnerships I've seen have been ones that think enough about operations as well as just the sales to ensure that we have a differentiated, better together story. Sales is compensating for us not having done the development up front. And that's the biggest thing I've seen a lot of people skip. And then they just try to compensate for just doing more.
There's actually a couple of questions in chat, which one's related to actually what Sunir asked too. So the first question is, what's your number one piece of advice on getting leadership buy-in? And Sunir's question is kind of a quick, fast follow on that. Like, how does the CEO report to the board about your activities, right? So that might be a good way to think about how to get leadership buy-in is thinking about how the CEO would report to the board about your activities.
Yeah. Well, let me start with buy-in. I think it's twofold. I mean, one is starting from what are their priorities and being able to show how partnerships helps. Depending on the leader, you sometimes need different approaches because they're more than others. Culture focused, and only, you just got to be aware of where your leader is at and be able to meet them where they're at, and speak about what they care about. In many ways, especially the larger partnerships, that we use the same approach to building a partnership and funding a business unit, a joint business unit, as you would just making an internal business case. So approaching it the same kind of way. Here's your priorities. Here's the potential output. Here's what you got to invest in and why you care about it. Just as you would any other internal resourcing activity. And then how the board reports to it and what a leader cares about. It's different by part. So I'm not sure there's a straight answer. Ones that are more focused on driving sales together, with sales leaders where they'll report here direct sales, here's our channel or our partner sales, when they report sales, and then you can begin to develop a staffing model based on some ACV amount in proportion. I've done others where there's a more strategic need, either acquire more users, build new products together, and then setting what that rationale is and then reporting it the way that normally does. So I'm not sure there's a straight answer.
Every business is going to be different, of course, but finding out what's, do you align to short-term objectives? Do you align to long-term objectives? I think is another way of thinking about it, right? Like if the CEO is going to be reporting on you to the board, is he reporting on you and how you're going to make everything more possible, next year and the foundation that you're building, or in 2 years or 3 years, or is she reporting on you, this quarter? Is it both? And making sure that you can align to that longer-term vision. Yeah. There was another question on, how often do you meet with other departments on alignment? I posted a follow-up question in chat to that because I think it matters on what role you play in partnerships, whether it's channel or tech partnerships, and like what you are gold on, kind of to your point, Kevin. Like, so on the channel side. So if you're on the channel side, I'm assuming that you're probably gold on pipeline, right? Close $1 and the infamously horrible bifurcation of sourced versus influenced revenue, right? Um, I meet with every single person that owns a pipeline number every week. Every week. So this is a weekly meeting. My Thursdays, I am in meetings all day, every day, or all day, every Thursday, I should say. So that's my take on it. Like you have to build internal partnership as much as you build external partnership, because building an ecosystem is a team sport. It's not is a company sport, not a team sport. So that'd be my take on it. Kevin, do you have a differing outlook whenever it comes to, if you're being gold on pipeline and dollars there?
The only other thing I would add, knowing your organizational context and where they're at, and then adjusting. So when we were starting to build out some channel partnerships at Coursera, it was early on the channel side, and we didn't have a product fully set up. So we had to meet with the product team much more frequently to educate them, and then had to meet a lot with sales ops and implementation to get the at scale provisioning ready for the channel. So I would say yes to what you say, but then also just knowing where your organization is at and where the biggest friction points are, and really building strong relationships with the other departments you need. And again, knowing that the culture of the company you're at. I worked in some, they get it, and so you have to do less internal educating, and then some who are very new to partnerships and don't understand who a partner is, how you work with partners type of company, and then you just have to do more meetings, educating, and showing intern.
There's another chat question that's a fun one. Do you wear a badge that says "Vote for me"? I don't know if you can see that one. I think in those meetings. No, my take on it is, and Justin, you do a really good job of this. You want your sellers to wear a badge that says, partner up, right? Like make your sellers famous would be my advice there. It's not about you. If it's about you, you're screwed. Right? Like if this is about Kevin, if this is about Justin, if this is about Jared and trying to get organizational buy-in, like it's on you to make it happen, but really where it needs to come from is the field, right? And telling those partner wins. Absent those, it doesn't matter what badge you're wearing. It could be I don't know, it could be a Robin Hood sticker. That's timely. That would get you kicked out of anywhere about right now.
I think it is good. I would say some of the best relationships I built with our sellers has actually been a bit vulnerable in saying, hey, this is my number. This is what I'm trying to hit, and of course digging into what they're trying to do and their challenges and finding where those align and being transparent about the ask across the business and and across the partnership. I think especially a lot of younger sellers, may not understand partnerships and your role and how you're actually there to help them to some degree. So it can be insightful for them to open up and just have a kumbaya and say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. These are my goals. I think I can help you. Let me learn about yours and the challenges you're facing. Let's find some common alignment there. So if you're in an alliances role like me, I'd say have those meetings with your sellers. Make sure they understand the pressure you're under as well, because then you can build that empathy bridge.
Yeah, because you align to what? I mean, there's actually a bunch of sellers, but about what, 15 core enterprise sellers?
Yep, team 15. Yeah.
Yeah, about a team of 15. So like that cadence is very different versus, a team of, 3 VPs, right? Or 4 regional AVPs. So, it might be more of if you align to 15 people, you're, building quarterly account lists, but then you have kind of like those biweekly check-ins on progress or whatever to advance those accounts. Kevin, I forgot, where are you located again?
California.
California. What are you still doing in California?
What are you still doing in California?
Well, did everyone leave?
I'm in Washington right now.
Oh, see, you're in Washington. You're not even in California right now. The people that are in California aren't. I was actually on Clubhouse last night, and there was I was talking to a whole bunch of people about, they're like, no, we're going to stay in California. But then literally they were like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my apartment in San Francisco. I'm like, wait, you're not even in San Francisco right now? And I ask you, you're in California, you're in Washington. It'll come back. It'll come back. It'll come back. Are they going to recall Newsom? I have to ask that. I'm having come from California. Do you think they're going to recall Newsom?
No, on the headlines. No.
Okay.
We'll see. I will say it hasn't been pleasant in the Bay Area with fire, COVID, and heat, and then power outages because the utility companies. So I think it's strange living for sure.
Well, this does not represent the opinion of anyone because we're an independent podcast, so we can talk about this stuff. It's kind of fun to go off topic for a second. I just hope that y'all do. So if you're in California out there, make sure you sign that petition. This is Jared Fuller's personal opinion. And then go check out Chamath Palihapitiya because I'm hoping he would announce on the heels of this because he'd want to make 0% state income tax and do a bunch of crazy stuff. And also there's so many things in this platform. You got to check it out. But anyways, we're coming up on the end here. If there's any last minute questions, we'll take them. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. We're going to be seeking feedback on this. So Justin and I will be posting in the CSA to make sure that we hear, what the heck went wrong because stuff did go wrong the first time around. And Sunir, thanks for shipping some feedback around this. We will continue to level up, partner up. Kevin Mcfarlane, it's been a pleasure. Justin, thank you for your time as well.
Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Likewise.
Next time. All right, appreciate it.